Welcome, everybody, to our very first monthly author reading room. I'm so excited to have you here. We have fabulous authors, which you probably already know because you're following at least one of us, or else you wouldn't have known about the event, probably. I think I have read books from almost everybody, and I really enjoy them. So I think that you will also enjoy the evening, or sorry, the daytime of the event. What we're going to do is have all four of us read for about 8 to 10 minutes from our books, and then we'll put links in the chat that are to our website, our newsletter sign up, and the buy link to the book. So that if there's anybody where you're like, oh, that sounds really good, I'm more interested in that author or that book, then you can click on any of the links that you want, and it's not going to be like a selling event, So a lot of authors have kind of a uh, um, what is it when you're not ex introvert? Yeah. We have kind of an introvert thing where, of course, we want to sell our books and make a living so we can write more books, but we don't really want to sell our books. So I thought this would be really fun for all of us. Particularly, sorry, I'm a little like high on adrenaline right here, so I will try to calm down and speak slower. But the times that you've gone to a bookstore or a library and you hear an author read from their book and speak, and you can ask them questions. Oh, those are some of my favorite times. And I thought, well, this is what we can do on Zoom, and it won't matter if we don't have to be, looking at the. I was looking at one of my favorite band's concert schedule, and of course, they're not anywhere near me, so I can't see them. But something like this, we can all come together as often as we want. So what we're going to do is just really quickly make sure that everybody knows how to use all of the Zoom menu items at the bottom. So if you move your mouse to the bottom of the screen, if it's not already there, you should see the menu pop up. So one of the things there is the chat, and you'll want to have that open, at least at the end, have it open so that you can see all the links and click on the ones that you're interested in. Also, I want everybody to find the reactions button and just practice real quick. We're going to click on the reactions button, and then we're going to click on the raise hand so that everybody knows this is how you raise your hand so that you can ask a question at the end. All right, we've got a few people finding the button. It's on the bottom menu. It says reactions. And then there's, smiling face and a laughing face and raise hand and lower hand. Yep, you can be like, I love that part. So please use the reactions button as much as you want. And at the end, when we open up the Q&A, then just use the raise hand button here, and then you can ask anybody any questions that you have. Let's see. Is there anything else that you need to know? We don't yet have an awesome name, Author Reading Room. You know what it is, and it's a good name. But if you have any ideas for a better name that still says this is what it is, but maybe has a little bit more sass or spunk or something to it, please go ahead and send us your ideas either in the chat, or you can reply to one of the emails that you got from me. And at the very end, I did not think of it until about 25 minutes ago. I do not have a evaluation form, but it would be super helpful for us if you would let us know your feedback at the end. What did you like the most or the least, and why? What can we do to make this more fun or more interesting for you? Is there a better time of day, or really anything that could help us to create better events in future months? Next month will be Cozy Mystery Month. It's going to be very exciting. And I'm not sure about April yet, but May is almost certainly going to be romantic suspense. And I know that I have a fantasy author who is ready to go in the summer. And as soon as we figure out a date, then I'll get a whole bunch of other fantasy authors together. And we'll just keep on adding genres to all the months until we have covered, everything we can think of, and we'll start all over again. I think that is all I have. Lindy Lou, your raised hand button is still up. Did you have a question? If so, you can just unmute yourself and ask it. Or did you maybe just forget to lower your hand, in which case you can use the reactions button and click on lower hand either way.
Kitty, how do I get rid of that check mark?
Check mark. Wow. What is that check mark for? Oh, I think maybe if you just click on it again. So click on reactions, click on check mark again. Yep, that's how you get rid of it. All right. Well, that's good to know if we ever need to ask a yes or no question. Cool. Okay, I'm going to take a deep breath here and introduce Leigh. Okay, so Leigh, when you're ready, you can unmute yourself and then I will put a spotlight on you so that everybody can see you while you read.
All right, there we go.
All right. Actually, let me spotlight you first and then I'll read about you. Spotlight. There we go. And then I'll bring up your bio. Okay. Leigh Duncan is a Publishers Weekly best-selling author of nearly 30 sweet romances and heartfelt women's fiction novels. Her books have been featured on Hallmark's Home and Family show. Leigh lives on Florida's East Coast, where she often takes a break from writing to go outside and watch a rocket launch. Awesome. Welcome, Leigh. Please tell us what book you're reading.
Today I am going to read from The Gift at Sugar Sand Inn, which is the first book in a 5-book series about 4 best friends who get a second chance at life, love, and happiness when they convert an abandoned beach house into a first-class inn on the Gulf Coast of Florida. Like I said, there are 4 main characters in this book. Michelle, who is a recent widow, Aaron, who is a world traveler, Nina, a chef, and Reggie, who is just trying to find her way in the world. So in this chapter, we're going to start with chapter 5. All of the characters in the book have been introduced, and this is the first scene in which they start to come together. So, snip. Oops. Michelle stared at the long stem lying atop the thin layer of mulch at her feet. At least a dozen buds sprouted along the green twig. She probably shouldn't have cut that one. She eyed the rest of the bush. It, along with the half-dozen others clustered around the front door, looked leggy and scraggly. The scattered blossoms smelled as delicious as she remembered, but the flowers were definitely paler than the rich red velvet the plants used to produce. Should she leave them alone? For all she knew, this might be the wrong season for trimming altogether. The roses had been Alan's hobby, not hers. She could pack everything she knew about the flowers into a thimble and still have room left over. But something had to be done about them. Who was going to take care of them if she didn't? Certainly not the people from the lawn service. When he was alive, Alan had put the fear of God into the workers, promising dire consequences if they so much as touched his darling babies. As for the twins, they knew the roses existed, but Michelle doubted they even spared more than a passing glance at their father's pride and joy. Aaron might break off a stem on his way out for a date. Ashley would occasionally pluck a blossom to put in a bed dish on the kitchen table. But as far as they knew, the roses pretty much took care of themselves. They didn't, though. Not if the time Alan had spent on them was any indication, and without his tender, loving ministrations this past year, they'd grown ragged and unloved, which was not the first impression she wanted to make on potential buyers. Alan, if you're up there, let me know if I'm doing this right, okay? She whispered. She wiped away a tear. It was only fitting that she had chosen today, the anniversary of his passing, to take care of his precious flowers. Sand crunched beneath tires as a car pulled to the curb somewhere close by. The sound of 2 people having a polite exchange drifted across the front lawn. Michelle turned, expecting to learn that one of her neighbors had visitors. Unable to believe what she was seeing, she shaded her eyes against the bright afternoon sun. Aaron? She whispered. It couldn't be. But the figure at the end of the flagstone walkway sure looked like her college roommate. The impression only deepened when the woman dressed in jeans and wearing a khaki jacket retrieved a duffel bag from the back seat of a silver sedan. The car door closed with a squeak and a thunk. The new arrival hoisted her bag onto one shoulder, turned, and headed towards Michelle, a wide smile breaking across her face. Michelle dropped the pruning shears onto the ground and tugged the work gloves from her hands. "Erin," she called, "what are you doing here? Aren't you supposed to be on your way to Belize or Madagascar?" "Surprise!" Erin dropped the duffel bag at her feet. She shoved a hank of shoulder-length blonde hair behind one ear and grinned. Dimples formed in her sun-darkened cheeks. "I was sure I threw that dart at India last night. My arm must have slipped because the darn thing landed in Virginia. So here I am." "Your aim's not that bad," Michelle said, her arms across her chest. In the 20-plus years since they'd graduated college, Erin had never once willingly spent her vacation in their hometown, not even last year. She'd dropped everything and flown home the minute word reached Alan's death, and she'd stuck close to Michelle's side for the next 2 weeks. But once they'd put the funeral behind them and transferred all the accounts into Michelle's name, her friend had jetted off to Costa Rica. She'd stayed there until the tourist season opened up in Alaska. Michelle cocked her head. "No, seriously, what are you doing here?" "What? A girl can't switch it up once in a while?" Erin swept the yard with an appraising look that landed squarely on Michelle. "Looks like I got here just in time. What on earth are you doing to those poor roses?" "Well, I was trying to shape them up a little bit." Michelle kicked the downed stem. "I'm not doing a very good job of it, I'm afraid. Alan used to make it look so easy." To her dismay, her lower lip trembled. Tears weren't far behind. Erin didn't say a word. She simply stepped forward and pulled Michelle into a hug. For a few long minutes, Michelle drank in the strength of the friend who'd flown 1,000 miles to be with her on the anniversary of the worst day of her life. She half expected Erin to end the embrace quickly. Instead, her friend simply held her, as steady and immovable as a rock, letting the tears flow until she'd composed herself. "Sorry about that," Michelle sniffed at last. "I guess I'm not handling much very well these days." She stepped away. Suddenly self-conscious, she blotted her tears on the hem of the old flannel shirt of Alan's she'd tugged over her shorts and a t-shirt that was definitely past its prime. She fingered the ragged ends of her hair. Erin had probably traveled all day to get here, yet she stood there looking as fresh as a daisy, while here she was, not wearing a drop of makeup, her wind-blown hair 3 days overdue for a shampoo. "No one expects you to have it all together, especially not today." Erin nodded. "Look, I've been on the road since 4 this morning and I could really use a cup of coffee. Why don't we leave this for Regina to deal with and come inside with me?" "Reggie?" Erin was the only one who called her younger sister by her full name. "Why would you say that? Reggie's not here." "She will be, though. Her and Nina both." Erin slipped a thin phone from her back pocket and glanced at the display. "In about 4 hours. That gives us plenty of time to get ready for a night on the town, but first, let's have that coffee, and you can fill me in on what's going on around here." Michelle bit her lip while she fought off another onslaught of tears. Her children didn't understand why, a year after their father's death, their mother couldn't get her act together. They'd relegated their dad to a cherished memory and moved on with their lives. But that was okay. Friends understood. Better still, they'd gather around her tonight, armed shoulders to lean on, and she bet purses filled with tissues. She took a breath that barely shook. "Yes, let's. I have lots to tell you." Erin quirked an eyebrow. "Oh, is there a hot new stud in your life?" A righteous indignation stirred in Michelle's belly. It had only been a year, she started to protest. One look at the teasing grin that had slid across Erin's face and her anger evaporated. "If there was, do you think I'd be out here doing yard work myself?" she shot back. "That's my girl," Erin laughed. "Now, How about that coffee?
That was beautiful, Leigh. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh,
I should mute myself now, right?
yep, you mute yourself. I'll remove the spotlight from you and then introduce the next person, Judith, and I'll put a spotlight on you. There we go. Hi, Judith. Okay, so you can unmute yourself.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah, while I introduce you.
There we go.
Judith Keim, a USA Today best-selling author, writes romantic women's fiction. She loves to write about strong women facing challenges and finding love and happiness along the way. Stories with heart. Thank you, Judith. What are you reading for us today?
Thank you. Today I'm reading from, I'm trying to get this right, A Road Trip to Remember. It is a standalone book that is part of the Seashell Cottage collection. So while these books are standalone, all of the characters in the books end up at some point at the Seashell Cottage Inn on the Gulf Coast of Florida. I usually write series, but I've really had fun doing these standalone books that center around the Seashell Cottage. And in this book, I'm going to read from chapter 1. Aggie is convincing her granddaughter to take her on a road trip. I'll start chapter 1. Aggie. Gran, you can't be serious. I can't do that. Yes, my darling, you can and you will. I need your help. Agatha, Aggie Robard, put as much pleading into her voice as possible without breaking down and crying. She had a plan for a road trip, and by damn, she was going to do it. At 72, and just through recovering from pneumonia, she couldn't make the drive alone, and there was no way she was going to let down the man she'd promised to visit. He was, in some respects, the one who got away. Not that Arnold, God rest his soul, would mind. He'd always known she'd love Donovan Bailey, too. Just think about it, Aggie urged, a road trip to remember. It would be good for her granddaughter Blythe to get out of town, get over her boyfriend, find a decent young man who'd adore her for being the lovable young woman she was. 2 women on an adventure, that's what they'd be. Aggie grinned with anticipation. What could be better on this March morning when the rest of their family was about to leave for a 14-day vacation in Hawaii? Aggie listened to Blythe go on about the need to stay in Ithaca to wrap up her college courses at Cornell before graduation. Aggie knew her beloved granddaughter had used that excuse to escape going home for spring break, gotten into an argument with her stepmother, Constance, about it, and was left out of the trip to Hawaii in the process. A spring break trip to Florida in early April will do you good, Aggie said, dangling this last piece of information in front of Blythe like a piece of her favorite toffee candy. Blythe let out a breathy, "Oh, that's where you want me to take you?" "Yes, I've rented a place on the Gulf Coast of Florida, the Seashell Cottage, for a week, starting at the end of March. That will give us time to get there, enjoy a week in the sun, and get back home before anyone suspects a thing." Suddenly, Blythe began to laugh. Her musical trills filled Aggie's ears and brought a smile to her face. "Frank, you're outrageous." She paused. "Do you think we can pull off something like this? Constance will be furious if she ever finds out." The smile disappeared from Aggie's face as if it had been ripped off with tape, leaving stinging skin behind. Constance Robard, her only child's second wife and Blythe's stepmother, was a pain in the behind, always telling her what she could or could not do. Aggie fought to find the right words. "Constance doesn't need to know every little thing I'm doing. Just because she manipulated me into selling my house and moving into the new life assisted living community, it doesn't mean I can't have a life of my own." There's a dance or two in this old lady yet. No one was going to take away the power to live her life her way, even if it meant ruffling a few feathers. Gran, you're not that old, Blythe protested. Peggy made her final plea. So, will you do it? You bet, said Blythe, a new eagerness in her voice. Florida sounds fantastic right now. I swear I haven't seen the sun in Ithaca for a week or more. I'll bring some work with me and do it there. Good, said Aggie. Meet me up Tuesday morning at 8 o'clock and I'll take care of the rest. And pack suntan lotion. We'll take the convertible. I love you, Gran. Don't worry, I'll come home over the weekend and see you Tuesday morning. This road trip is going to be fun. Don't I know it, Aggie said, feeling as if she was about to be handed a get out of jail card free. Still smiling, Aggie clicked off the call. Blythe was a serious young woman in the final semester of her senior year at Cornell. She spent years doing what others had dictated and was just beginning to understand that life should be fun too. He hoped if she left Blythe with anything to remember her by, it would be this. Aggie's one suitcase sat beside the front entrance of the main building assisted living complex she now called home. It wasn't a bad place to be. It had every convenience possible, good food and lovely surroundings, both in and outside the buildings. Best of all, she'd made some good friends here. Two of them, Edith Greenbaum and Rose Ragazzi, had suggested the Seashell Cottage as a place for her getaway. They'd once made that suggestion to Noelle North, the former head of the health program at New Life, and she'd ended up married to some hotel mogul. You never knew what could happen. Aggie had sworn these friends to secrecy, but felt it was only right for someone to know her true location should anything untoward happen. She owed that to her son, Brad, and daughter-in-law, Constance. So you're going on vacation with your family, one of the staff. How nice for you. Aggie glanced at Edith and Rose, who'd come to say goodbye, and nodded. She didn't like lying in any form and was relieved she actually was going on a family vacation, even if the only other family member was Blythe. Her eye caught sight of something. She looked through the glass panel front door to see her white convertible pull up to the front of the building with Blythe at the wheel. This car represented so much to Aggie. Her purchase of it had sent Constance into a rage, claiming Aggie was losing her mind to buy something like this at her age. It was the beginning of Constance's campaign to get her to move out of her big old house in Dedham outside of Boston and into New Life. Aggie had finally given in to Brad's pleas, put his mind at ease about her safety, and had made the move. But she refused to get rid of the car. She kept the shiny new beauty in a storage facility nearby and gave Blythe the extra key fob to it. After she died, Blythe would have her car for her own use. For now, Aggie needed to know she had wheels. Here's your ride, said Edith, hugging her. Safe trip and good luck with Donovan. Rose grinned at her and wrapped her arms around Aggie. We'll be with you in spirit. Remember every little detail so you can tell us all about it. Aggie held it in a laugh. There was nothing Rose liked better than a good romantic story. Blythe hurried over to them and grabbed hold of Aggie's suitcase. Hi, everyone. Green-eyed, black-haired Blythe reminded Aggie of a beautiful young woman who was just coming into her own. Long-legged, thin, and with a wild in clothes that drove her stepmother crazy, Blythe was the perfect person to take this trip with her. By the time they got back, Aggie hoped Blythe would have a better appreciation of herself. After chatting politely, Blythe took hold of Aggie's arm. Come on, Gran, time to hit the road. Aggie marched to the car alongside Blythe, feeling like she was sprouting wings with each step, loving this new sense of freedom. After she buckled herself into the passenger seat, she turned to the small crowd gathered at the doorway and waved. Okay, pedal to the metal, girl, Aggie said, sitting back in her seat, eager to begin the journey ahead.
Kitty. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Judith.
It's a fun story, but like all of women's fiction, they each have their challenges to meet and to survive.
Yeah. Wonderful. Listen, I forgot to tell Leigh, so now I will ask Leigh and Judith both. Please put links to your website, your newsletter sign up if you have it, and the link to the book in the chat, please. And then people can click on all the things that they're interested in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, now the next speaker is going to get introduced by Laura Drake. So Laura, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, our next speaker is Kitty Bucholtz. She writes romantic comedy and superhero urban fantasy, often with an inspirational element woven in. Her stories feature women whose sense of humor and nervous gutsiness get them into and out of all kinds of trouble. Here's Kitty.
Thank you, Laura. So I'm going to be reading from, there we go, Love at the Fluff and Fold, which is book 1 of the Strays of Loon Lake series. The Strays of Loon Lake is a sweet small town romance series where stray men and stray dogs find forever homes with the women who love them. You can get the prequel short story, Welcome to Loon Lake, for free when you sign up for my newsletter, if you like the sound of this after I'm done reading. To give you an idea of what the story is about, I'm going to be reading chapter 13, which is pretty darn close to the middle of the book. But it's one of my favorite chapters because, yeah, you know, you just have some of your favorite parts when you're writing, and this part always just makes me happy when I'm reading it. The story is about Cassie and Danny, who have been childhood friends forever. Cassie was sort of falling in love with Danny by the time they got to high school, but there was a new girl in town, and he ended up marrying her, getting divorced. Uncle Willie is Cassie's uncle, but has been Uncle Willie to both of them. And he's finally decided he's had enough of waiting for these two to figure out that they belong together. So he tells them he's dying. And everything else in the story is happening because the two of them think Uncle Willie's dying, and he is telling them that he's going to leave them all of his business that's in the small town Loon Lake. So from chapter 13, and the one thing I did forget in all of my planning for today is to put my reading glasses at my computer. So I think I can do it this way. Danny stared at Cassie, unsure of what to say or do. He'd expected her to want to talk about the business, her inheritance. He was trying to make sure he wasn't taking anything that was rightfully hers, while also giving Uncle Willie what he wanted. But he blinked and shook his head a little, trying to clear it. If she wanted to talk about them, it was bad news, right? Cassie wasn't selfish. It wasn't that he thought she'd ask him to remove himself so that she could inherit the entire business. But what could she possibly have to say about the two of them that wasn't bad news? She probably needed to set some boundaries to protect herself, and rightfully so. He'd treated her unkindly the last few years. He knew she'd had a crush on him, maybe more, all through high school, but he'd been blinded by Lily's newness, how different she was from any of the small town kids he'd grown up with. He'd begun to dream of being a different man, living in a city with endless possibilities. He'd be successful and respected. No one would know about his brother or his parents. He could make himself as new and as shiny as Lily. Cassie had continued to be his friend all through high school, listening to him talk about Lily, not calling her bright shiny in front of him, struggling to be supportive even when he'd decided to ask Lily to marry him. She'd even continued to be his friend when his marriage fell apart, but by then he was so embarrassed by how he'd acted, how wrong he'd been about Lily, about everything, how he'd screwed up the lives of everyone around him. He couldn't stand to be around Cassie after a while because she still didn't blame him. He deserved the things his mother and his ex-wife said about him. They were all true. He was a screw-up, an uneducated loser, a country hick without a future. But Cassie didn't see it that way. She always saw the good in people, even him. And for the last few years, that had hurt more than anything else, because she was just wrong. At least that had been his thinking up until he'd seen her waiting for him on the stairs 2 weeks ago. Maybe it was the threat of death hanging over them, but in that moment he wanted to accept her constancy and forgiveness and start over. She made all things new again and filled his life with sunshine in a way no one else ever had. So if she looked at him so seriously and wanted to talk about their relationship now, after what Uncle Willie surprised them with this morning, it couldn't be good. She'd have to tell him that while she believed in him from a distance, she couldn't risk her future by being yoked to him permanently. She was probably going to tell him he was too uneducated to run a business, that he needed to bow out so he didn't ruin Uncle Willie's life's work. He swallowed and stared at the lake, telling himself to buck up and take it. She couldn't say anything he didn't deserve. Go on, he said, the tension in the silence stretching his nerves. She cleared her throat. I'm not sure where to start. Say it quick, it'll hurt less, he said, still avoiding her gaze. He saw her nod out of the corner of his eye. She cleared her throat again. Okay, quick and painless. I love you. I'm in love with you. With or without what Uncle Willie wants to do with his will, is there... She swallowed. Will there ever be a chance for us? I thought maybe it was now or never. Ask you before you decided if you're leaving. When she said, I'm in love with you, Danny turned to stare at her. Comprehension was slow in coming. He opened his mouth to speak, but didn't know what to say, so he closed it, then opened it again. Finally, a short laugh came out. Cassie started to pull her hand away, but he held it tight. I'm sorry, he said. I'm just having a hard time. You still, even after everything? How? He choked out. How can you love such a complete screw-up? She shook her head at him, her expression hardening. Danny Kessler, I know people have told you that for years, and you've chosen to believe them. Her voice was as hard as nails. But I have defended you to anyone who dared talk like that about you. This is your only warning. Don't you ever talk about yourself that way again, or I'll give you the what for I've given the others. Her voice was fierce by the time she finished. He scowled. Hasn't anyone told you how crazy that makes you look in light of the evidence? Don't you care what people think? She huffed a little breath, and one corner of her mouth tipped up. I care what God thinks of me, she said, and he seems pretty adamant about forgiving people and loving them and helping them. How could I do less than that with my best friend? As for the rest, the people who know me know who I am on the inside. And the ones who don't, she shrugged. Why should their opinion matter? Do you care that much what people think? I care what people think of you, he said. You're beautiful and generous and smart and kind, and I don't want anyone to think less of you for pursuing a known loser for a decade. She slugged him in the arm. He pulled back, surprised. I told you to watch what you say, she said sternly. She looked a little like a bulldog growling at him. He stared at her, not understanding but really enjoying this new to him side of Cassie. A snort of laughter burst from his chest, and he squeezed her hand tighter. He looked out over the lake again, trying to fit all these puzzle pieces together. Cassie loved him, and she was defending him to him. Could this be real? Cassie took a long breath and waited. He could always count on her to wait for him to think things through. It was one of the things he'd always loved about her. She could chatter like a girl with the best of them, but when he needed quiet, she gave it to him. He tried to figure out the pros and cons of attempting to start over with her, but his mind couldn't keep one thought in his head long enough to measure it before it jumped to another and another. She loved him, not only as a friend, though he'd always known she'd never stopped loving him that way. No, she loved him as a man, still. It was a miracle. He raised his eyes to the blue of the sky. Fluffy gray and white clouds skimmed across an invisible surface like dragonflies on the lake. Somewhere up there, God was watching. What was he thinking? He's probably thinking I'd be a fool to throw that away again. His stomach felt queasy. If he screwed this up. No, he wouldn't. He'd do what he hadn't done with Lily. He'd fight for Cassie's heart every day for the rest of his life if that's what it took. He turned to her, facing her with his whole body, still not letting go of her hand. She looked nervous. How could he dispel her nerves, explain to her how humbled he was by her faith and constancy? He skimmed his free hand down her hair, over her cheek, and rested it against the side of her face, awed by her trust in him. And still he had no words to say what he wanted to say. So he kissed her. He didn't even think, just leaned in, giving her no warning. But apparently she didn't need a warning. She met his lips with hers, soft and warm, her free hand curled around his neck, pulling him closer. No other kiss had felt like this one. Years of waiting and wondering and never knowing. He'd forgotten how much he'd once wanted to find out what her kiss would be like. Sunshine. She tasted like spring flowers and sunshine. Of course, he should have known. His heart felt like it was going to burst from his chest. Forgiveness and renewal and new life right here on a dock in Loon Lake. Perfect. The magnificent kiss ended and he crushed her against him, her hold on him just as tight. He decided right then, now that he had her, her love and faithfulness and laughter and strength, he would never, ever let her go. And that is my reading from Love at the Fluff and Fold. All right, I am going to introduce our fourth reader today, Laura Drake. So I'm going to remove my spotlight and put the spotlight on Laura. Here we go. And here is Laura. Laura Drake is an author of women's fiction and romance. Her debut, The Sweet Spot, won the 2014 Romance Writers of America Rita Award. She's since published 12 more books. She's a wife, grandmother, and motorcycle chick in the remaining waking hours. Thank you, Laura. What are you going to read today?
I'll tell you what, it's tough following all those fantastic stories.
Right?
I'm reading from my April 19th release, The Road to Me, women's fiction. And my tagline is ordinary women at the edge of extraordinary change. And I think that this book is indicative of that. I was born to be a hippie. I resisted. Jacqueline Oliver. This is chapter 1, by the way. Saturday. I should be preparing for the show that could be the rocket fuel to propel my small business to the big time. Instead, I'm picking up my jailbreak grandmother in the desert of back and beyond Arizona. As it turns out, to get to this show-low place in less than 2 days, I had to fly from Seattle to Phoenix, rent a car, and drive 180 miles. And the earliest flight I could get arrived here at 2. I spent the last hour driving, worrying about how much this is costing me. I had to withdraw funds from my safety net for the plane ticket, and none of this was in the budget. No helping it though, no one can accuse me of not taking care of my grandmother. When she broke her hip falling out of a chair in geriatric yoga class, I had her seen by the most prominent orthopedist. He didn't take Medicare, so I paid the bill myself. If Nellie'd been in charge, she'd have had a native shaman. The rehab center is the best in the desert, but they're not used to patients trying to get away, especially with ones with fresh pins in their hip. The deputy called last night to tell me they'd found her. They did a raid on a charlatan doing sweats in the desert. They arrested the leader, but most of the followers scattered. Nellie couldn't make a clean getaway, what with her walker, and the fact that, except for a few strands of Mardi Gras beads, she was naked. I tried to talk him into putting her on a plane, but he said he'd only release her to the next of kin. She told him there was a conspiracy at the facility to sell her into sexual slavery. He didn't buy it, but he wanted a family member to come take charge. That's me, the last of the line. I'm a failed third-generation hippie. I know where the second generation is, under a marble slab at Long Rest Cemetery. It's the first generation who's gone AWOL again. I'm pretty good at controlling myself, but my grandmother might as well try to herd dinosaurs. My guts roil in a stew of impatience, irritation, and the premonition of chaos. And under it all, the fury of a child forced to care for yet one more adult. My mother couldn't help it. She had zero control over herself or the booze. But my grandmother visited our succession of rattier apartments. She saw the squalor, my mother's helplessness, my desperation. And after a day or two, she'd tuck me in, tell me she loved me, and in the morning was gone. I don't know if I resent her more for leaving me or myself for believing that every time this time would be different. Nellie was probably headed for a convention on saving the universe through toe massage or something. She was new age long before it was new, trying every religion, every weird philosophy out there. Hampering her enlightenment is the fact that she has the intellectual depth of a kiddie pool and the attention span of a caffeinated gnat. Too harsh? No doubt, but my grandmother earned it. 50 miles ago, the rocks and saguaro rushing by the car window gave way to dusty evergreens and the rocky hillsides of scrub grass. Being an artist, I know Leo would love this landscape. I'd text him a photo if I hadn't just told him we're over. He's a great guy, and I really enjoyed our time together, but I learned long ago it's easier to end it now before he could really matter. The temperature is better than the blast furnace I remember, but I can feel my skin parching and I miss green already. I drive past tiny towns with boarded up stores and gas stations that, from the prices on their weathered signs, pumped their last gallon in the 50s. What would cause a person to wash up here in the middle of nowhere? I shudder as if my body wants to shake off the possibility of that fate. The sign for Sholo blows by, announcing a population of a little over 10,000, larger than I imagined, but not as big as I hoped. It doesn't matter. With luck, I'm in and out in an hour. The nav system guides me on to Deuce of Clubs Avenue. I turn at the handsome split-level building, pull into a parking spot and turn off the key. I sit, trying to slow my heartbeat. Why? The question appears out of the murk like one of those old 8-ball prophecies. Nellie claimed she loved me. Her visits made it clear she loved my mother because Nellie took over porcelain god duty, holding my drunken mother's hair, hugging her and wiping her face with a wet cloth while she cried. And I remember my grandmother's smile when she'd rock me on her bony lap, reading me a book, which made the hurt even more when she abandoned me. My balloon of hope lost a bit of lift each time until it was a wrinkly little thing I kicked into the back of my closet. My childhood memories have faded from Technicolor to sepia over the years, and I've relegated them to a drawer in my mind. But I haven't had as much success with the why. How could my grandmother profess to love me yet leave me, a child, as the only adult in the house? I've begun the trip to the desert several times, determined to finally ask. It'd be such a relief to know. But just as many times I stopped before my car left the parking lot, because it's dangerous to ask a question if you don't know you'll survive the answer. I listened to the tick of the cooling engine. I shouldn't feel bad. I haven't been to see her, but my not being there made zero difference. But hey, if she wants to throw that in my face, fine. She can learn to live with disappointment. I tighten my stomach muscles to take a blow and head inside for the Sholo showdown. I walk in and am smacked by the institutional smell of pine deodorizer, sweat, and floor wax. When I tell the bald officer in the front desk while I'm here, his pudgy face lights up. Ah, Nellie, she's a kick in the pants. Then he puts on his official state employee face. Can I see some ID? Please tell me you don't have her locked up. I pull my wallet and show him my driver's license. Not hardly. We've got a cot in the office behind the day room. She's been bunking there and entertaining us with her stories. Nellie's got stories, all right. Most of them are exaggeration or downright fabrication. Do you mind retrieving her for me? We've got a flight out of Phoenix tonight. He cocks his head like a quizzical dog. You don't want to be driving back after dark. Lots of critters on the roads. I hold my sigh. I'll take it under advisement. He looks like he wants to say more, but then he just shakes his head and clumps to the door at the back wall. I try not to stare at the few ragged people sitting in plastic chairs that line the walls. They have no such compunction. But to be fair, in a skirt, low heels, and pantyhose, I'm the one that doesn't fit in. They tend towards overalls and flannel. The officer steps back through the door and holds it open. He's carrying a lumpy pillowcase. Nellie's clothes, I assume. My grandmother shuffles in. She's a new age explosion, from her chartreuse and black striped walker, adorned with bells and leather bags of rocks she calls crystals, to her oversized tie-dyed t-shirt and black tights sagging on stick legs. Her wrinkles lift to a sunny grin. Jack, you came. See, Easy, I told you she'd come. Easy is Grandma's imaginary friend. I remember her talking to him when I was little. I want to argue that she gave me no choice. I want to tell her to lose my number. I want to bolt for the door. But I spent 15 years being a dutiful daughter. I can stand 5 hours acting the dutiful granddaughter, even if it makes my teeth grind. Are you ready to go? I'm in. Where are we going? The walker wheels squeak their way around the desk. The cop hovers as if he can help by making supportive hand gestures. You take care now, Nellie, and you come back and see us when you're in our neck of the woods, you hear? He hands me the dirty prison break pillowcase. She stops to pat his pudgy cheek. I will, Roscoe. In the meantime, you keep these miscreants in line. Red spreads up from his neck to suffuse his entire head. And you stay away from charlatans. She wags a bird claw finger at him. Now, don't you go judging by looks. You never know who's going to give you the last piece to the puzzle. She pushes her way over to me, her dusty Converse high tops squeaking in time with the walker wheels. That's from The Road to Me, releases the middle of April.
Awesome. Nice. Oh my goodness, this is so much fun, you guys. Well, listen, that was very enjoyable for me. Hopefully everybody else. I was watching people's expressions. Everybody seemed to be enjoying themselves, which of course, how could we not? What great books. Listen, while I am talking, if anybody has some questions for the authors, remember you're just going to move your mouse down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where it says reactions, and then click on raise hand. I'll just show you. See, and then the raise hand button icon will appear, and you can ask anybody any questions that you want. So Leigh has already pre-ordered Laura's book. I have to say, Laura, we've been friends for a long time, and I think I've just forgotten how funny I find you. Barb, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourself and yeah, ask your question.
Okay, I just loved all the readings. They were fantastic. It gives me kind of inspiration. I'm doing a reading next week on March the 1st, my first reading. So, boy, I've got a lot of practicing to do. Anyway, my first question is for Leigh. It was mentioned in the introduction that one or more of your books has been produced on a Hallmark movie. Is that right? Hallmark, or
When Hallmark first went into the publishing business, they started out asking authors to write books based on their most popular books, most popular movies. So I wrote a book based on Journey Back to Christmas, and another one on A Country Wedding. And that's how I got my start with Hallmark. And since then I've written 5 books for them, 3 original works
Oh,
and then
wow.
the 2 based on the movies.
Oh, great, great. And do they has any become a Hallmark special movie or
Fingers
themselves?
crossed. Fingers crossed.
Right,
Actually, I
right.
just got an email from the new manager there at Hallmark Publishing, and she's asking for some insights. And I'm hopeful that one of the Heart's Landing books will end up as a movie.
Oh,
So,
great, great.
yeah.
Okay. I had a question for Judith. Are we going from one author to another, or
No,
is it
no,
okay
go
to mix
ahead
it up?
and ask. Yeah.
Okay,
Anybody asking any
Judith.
questions?
Okay, Judith, your series, the Seashell Cottages collection, is it? How many stories do you have in that series? In that collection, I should say.
Judith, if you want to unmute
Oh,
yourself.
she needs to unmute. Unmute.
Sorry, I'm on 3
There you-
screens and my arrow was on the other screen and I couldn't get it over. So sorry
Oh
about
my
that.
gosh, 3 screens.
So I know it's not good. So there are 5 of them, and I want to continue to do them because even though I've started a new series, it's fun to have individual stories with a link, the only being that at some point they're at the Seashell Cottage. So you can do all different kinds of stories.
Okay.
Thank you for
And
asking.
your characters for each, how you develop each, I mean, how do you come up with the different scenarios? Is it just something that comes to you, or do the characters come to you first, or how do you first come out on those ideas for each of Seashell stories?
Well, they're individual books, so it
Right.
would be
Right.
writing an individual story, but I always, many times the characters go there as a place to recover from something, to, after a disappointment. One of the gals, she's been dumped by her fiance and so on, and actually that's A Christmas Star, and actually in that book, Rose and the other gal in this book are the ones that suggest she go to Florida to recover. She doesn't want to be in Boston anymore for holidays. So I've sort of tied those 2 together, but they always have a reason to go to the cottage.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. I'll
Thank
give
you.
somebody else a chance to ask questions. I have other questions, but I could give somebody else a chance to ask a
Okay.
question.
So Barb, I'll let you mute yourself for a moment, and then Linda has a question for Leigh. Leigh, what's coming out next for you? Oh, and we'll have to unmute you.
Okay. All right. I am working on book 3 in the Orange Blossom series, Broken Road, which I plan to have out sometime this summer. And then after that, another, what I call an inn story, a story about some people who open an inn or work at an inn. So,
That sounds fun.
yeah.
And will the end story possibly be a series?
Yes, definitely.
Sweet. Yay. Okay, remember, anybody else who has questions, and authors, keep an eye on the chat. There's all sorts of lovely things being said about you. If anybody else has questions, raise your hand and I'm going to come back to Barb. Barb has more questions. Go ahead, Barb. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, Laura, I pre-ordered your book. I can't wait for it to come.
Thank you.
And did you actually, for your research, visit a prison or jail? Did you actually go to one and smell the smells? And
No, I didn't. I did not. And I just wanted on the record, I have never been in jail. There are some
Okay.
people that might not
that was
believe
my
that.
next question.
They,
You what?
they end up on a Route 66 road trip together, the grandmother and the granddaughter. And I have driven or ridden a lot of that road on a motorcycle, and even some of it, the abandoned part, on a bicycle. So a lot, I was very familiar with the area. But I'll tell you what, as an author, and I know a lot of you will agree with me, I don't know how anyone wrote before Google, because you can see pictures of landscape and homes, and it's just wonderful. Thank you, Barb.
Mhm. Yeah. And what are you working on next? What's our next thing we can look forward to?
Okay. I have another road trip story. I loved writing this so much. I'm writing another one, but the road to me is funny and emotional and at times sad. But this next one is about a vet who has guilt, that comes home, ends up taking her sister with her on a road trip. And it's a lot sadder. In fact, I'll turn it in about a week, and I'm hoping my editor can help me find a way to lighten it a bit.
And who's your editor for that book?
I am with Story Plant, which is a
okay.
small but prestigious press. And I am going to get back to romance, but right now I am so loving women's fiction.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Laura.
I will say
And
that I,
did
for
want to
one,
know what Kitty was working on next.
ah,
Sorry.
oh, I was just
Go
going to say,
ahead.
I, for one, bawled my eyes out during most of the Sweet Spot, Laura's first book. I was
Oh,
not
yeah.
expecting that. I was just crying all the time, it seemed like. But also, like,
I will rip your heart out, but I'll never leave you in a bad place, I promise.
nice. So Barb, you were asking, what am I working on next?
Yes.
I am trying to do the appropriate business thing, which is to think about what I need to write in order to please my readers more than myself. And so, I started writing when before self-publishing was a thing, and when editors and agents at conferences were always saying, don't write book 2. If you haven't sold book 1, don't write book 2. So I, being the traditional good girl and trying to please everybody, followed the rules, and I wrote a whole bunch of book 1s, as opposed to some of my friends who were like, I'm going to write whatever I want. And then when self-publishing became a thing, they already had 5 books in a series that they could put out. I put out a whole bunch of book 1s. So I'm working on making at least 3 books out in any one series. And I decided to work on the Traverse City in Love series, which Little Miss Lovesick is the first book, because I don't know exactly why, but I would say it's because the chicklet voice is just, it makes me so happy. I love that I and the sassiness and the trying to figure things out and the knowing every thought in the reader's head. It's probably the most Kitty sounding voice. And also, I kind of miss home. And, the National Cherry Festival is the really big event in Traverse City, Michigan, which is more or less home for me. So that's the series that I write that's based on a real place. And so
Great.
lots more research. I have to make sure that I'm having people go to the street that actually goes in that direction and do the thing and go to the place that's actually there. I'm having so much fun with it. So, cherry on top is
Great.
going to be the new newsletter freebie that will be finally the first time that I write something that you literally can only get by signing up for my newsletter, as opposed to just signing up for the newsletter or buying it somewhere. And then those people got so into my skull so quickly that I was like, I can't write only a short story, but I don't have time to write a full novel just to give it away in the newsletter. So I have figured out a way to give you like the beginning of their short story, of their story, as cherry on top, and that will be the newsletter freebie, and then like a full length novel of their whole story. And people who know me know that there's probably going to be a lot of humor. There may well be some tears, and there's absolutely going to be a lot of food. So
Oh, good. Great. Awesome, Kitty. Thank you.
thanks for
Thank you.
asking, Barb. Pat, what is your question?
Well, I've really enjoyed listening to you guys read today, and I have a couple books here that I now want to order. But I was thinking, as somebody said something a little bit ago, what's COVID done to you? I'm normally a really optimistic person, and this last 2 years has just taught me about depression and taught me about being stuck in the house. And I've really changed, and I wonder what that's done to you. And all of you write very optimistically, mostly from what it sounds like. And what's that done?
Yeah. Ladies, why don't somebody else answer before me? I'm always the first person to talk. Go ahead. Any of you, just go ahead and unmute.
I'll answer. For me, I would, I think, be very depressed if I didn't have the writing. For me, it's been an escape because, of course, I'm creating my own world. And because I tend to be optimistic, I have found it a source of relief, I guess. And the other odd thing is I've become so accustomed to being indoors that I've sort of become a hermit. So because I so seldom go out, but definitely the writing has been a great blessing for me.
See, it's opposite for me. It's reminded me, it's made me slow down. And I don't do that very well usually, but I've gotten outside and I've become more optimistic because in spite of what we're worried about or all the things that go on in your brain, you go out in nature and everything's the same. It just calms me down.
And you also moved, did you move during COVID, Laura, or before COVID?
Yes, during about 5.5 hours northeast of where we lived. And in a way that was good too, because it distracted me. I wasn't stuck inside. I was running back and forth.
Yeah. And you were just telling me the other day how gorgeous the looking out your windows is now.
Well, see, we were living in Midland, Texas, which is that part of Texas that is, are we there yet? You know, it's flat and no trees and no grass and oil wells everywhere. And now I'm outside Fort Worth and we have deer wander through the yard. And I have a fox that comes and takes a dump in my backyard every day. I don't know what that's about, but we have lots of nature. It's pretty neat.
Nice. How about you, Leigh?
COVID it gave me an opportunity to be more productive than usual because I didn't have all of the distractions, all of the places to go and people to see. So as a result, I had 8 book releases last year, which is more than I have ever had in my entire life and more than I ever want to do again. But I am really looking forward to seeing the end of this thing so that we can get back to a new normal. I know it won't be the same. It'll be a new normal. So,
yeah. As for me, I think that COVID just hit in the middle of a whole bunch of other things that were going on in my life. So I had just moved to a new country. I finally realized that the craziness inside my head was burnout, which I didn't understand what was going on. I was really a mess on the inside of my head. So at first, I was just writing, trying to find any kind of writing that had no pressure and all joy. So I actually came up with a book that, of course, now I want to write. It was supposed to just be an exercise in self health, trying to get some good mental health going. But I started writing a chick lit murder mystery book where the heroine dies in chapter 1 and is a ghost for the entire series. So of course now I want to write that now too. But also, and I can only say this because there are women here, though I just realized as I said that this is a recording that will go out on YouTube. So I'm just going to say it. Apparently, I'm also at that age where hormones are changing all the things in my head and body as well. And COVID hit right about the time that I stopped really wanting to leave the house anyway. So my husband, who is a big introvert, he's like, this is awesome. Like, you don't want to go anywhere and we can't go anywhere and we can just be alone together for the first time in 30 years, like literally not having anybody over. So we had a couple of pretty good years that I was like, I feel kind of guilty. Like, we're so happy. But then I also was working really hard on my business. I'm one of those people who, when I'm just writing, I'm really happy for a while, and then I really miss teaching. But then if I really focus on teaching and I'm not getting enough writing done, then I'm happy for a while, and then I really miss writing. And so I'm finally getting a little bit of a balance going. I worked on my business really hard during that first 2 years of COVID, and now I feel just like super happy. I'm writing, I'm teaching, I'm coaching, I'm hosting events, and yet that whatever hormonal change or whatever it is, I'm still where you can't see me. I'm in my sweats, so in my happy office. So that's me. And also, authors, do you have questions for each other? For some of you, this will be the first time that you heard somebody else's book being read, or even heard about or read about any of the other books. So
I just have to say how much I enjoyed all of those books. I've been because I'm writing a little bit harder women's fiction, I've been reading it, and you guys convinced me I need to go back. I felt like I was just like my heroine of Missing Green. I was missing all that soft emotion. So I'll be buying your books.
well, listen, anybody who wants to take themselves off mute for any last thoughts or anything. Also, if you don't know how to save the chat, I can just tell you real quick, because all the links to all of the authors' books and websites and everything are in the chat. If you move your mouse over, if you open up the chat, so that's by moving your mouse to the bottom menu, clicking on chat, it'll show up on the side of your screen. And then at the very bottom right-hand corner of the chat, you should see a little smiley face and then 3 dots. And if you click on the 3 dots, then you should find Save Chat. And once the meeting ends, you'll find that a file just pops up on your computer, and it'll be everything that is in the chat, so you don't have to worry about forgetting. If there
Kitty?
aren't, yes,
Sorry, if I could just come in.
please. Hi,
First of all,
Charlotte.
it's the first time I've ever participated. Sorry, I have to take those headphones off. They're horrible when you speak. Nothing is mine tonight. I've got Frick's phone, his headphones, everything. So I just want to say I've never participated in something like this. So it's super fun for me. What an experience. Wow. Listen to each reading your books. And thank you so much. Can you, at the end of this, in that chat, just share your book titles again, please, because I didn't get them down. And then being in Sweden and never been exposed to something like this, where does a person go and buy your books?
I'll let everybody answer individually, but probably the answer is going to be anywhere books are sold. So for instance, Charlotte, you and I have recently during COVID found Amazon.se got launched here. And for quite a long time, they didn't have any books, but I just noticed that now they're beginning to sell books there as well. So probably everybody is going to say wherever books are sold, but let me just let everybody else answer as well.
Mine, the that I put on mine is the publisher's link, and there are all kinds of places you can buy from there.
Yeah. I went directly to Amazon and pre-ordered your book, Laura. So it's right there. My books are in Kindle Unlimited, so any subscriber can read them for the cost of the monthly subscription. And they're also available on Amazon to purchase, but because of Amazon's rules, they're not available anywhere else.
Okay, but if they're on Kindle, that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
My books are available everywhere. And I've put both Amazon link and the books to read link because they are on Audible, several audio sites, and they can be purchased through or read through libraries as well, through Hoopla and Overdrive and so on. So I think with all of those possibilities, you should be able to find it, even in Sweden.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Okay.
And you know, for anybody who is listening from another country, I will say that having moved around now, this is my fourth country that I've lived in. Most places, most of the local bookstores, whether they're chains or independent stores, in any country, you can order a book that is in print. Like if it's an actual print copy, you can order. So, for instance, Charlotte, our bookstore, which I cannot say properly, Academic Bokhandeln. You can order almost anything that's available in print anywhere from there. It just takes a little bit of time. It's expensive, but it can be done. Also, for anybody anywhere, if you have a local bookstore, or if you don't have a local bookstore, I just put a link in the chat to the local bookstore that, if I remember right, it would be really funny if I was like, nope, that is not the one from my hometown, but I'm pretty sure this is the bookstore from my hometown. That during COVID, one of the things that they changed is they made themselves your long distance local bookstore. So they have like a free shipping policy. And also, of course, if you're in that town, you can just, well, you used to be able to just, drive by and pick up, like you can drive by and pick up your groceries during COVID. So most independent stores and chain stores also can order print books from pretty much anywhere, I think. All right. If there's anything else, anybody just unmute yourself. Otherwise, let me just say thank you so much to our authors and our participants. If any of our participants are also authors and you would like to be on a future author reading room event, just reach out to me and let me know. My website again is in there, and my email address is kitty@kittybucholtz.com. I am so excited to have you here. Remember, next month we will be doing Cozy Mystery Authors, and that will be on March 23rd. The time is slightly different because one of our authors, Kaz Delaney, is going to be calling in from Australia, and she will have to get up before it is light out in order to be on the call. So it's going to be a couple hours later, and then there's a time change difference where it changes in one country but not another. So you'll get an email with the exact time and the Zoom link and all that. If there is anything else,
Kitty,
otherwise,
I saved your link to my Lake Forest Roundtable group, who are putting on a reading coming up, and so I'm sure when their books are ready to come out, that they might contact you for future readings. Because this was very well done, very professional, very happy, very joyous, and I really enjoyed it. So I'll be recommending anybody to come and join and on your future readings, because this was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you,
for doing
Barb.
it.
Thank you so much. And thank you for everyone. I mean, really, the most wonderful people have signed up to be authors reading their books. So it's been a true pleasure. And Barb, when you have a book out that fits in some genre that you can read with us, like, please contact me. Let me know. Anybody else who's an author, please let me know.
Thanks,
Um,
Kitty.
and
Kitty,
I'm going,
I
yeah.
wanted to say thank you so much for having us here today. This has been a lot of fun, and it was just great listening to all of the other authors read their books. So,
Yay.
Yes, thank you so, so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Very good. Loved it.
Wonderful. If anybody wants to leave anything in the chat about it would be great if you made this change, it'd be even better. Feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, I'll close the room in a minute. If people want to unmute themselves and just be chatty for a second before I close the room, feel free. I'm hitting the save chat button a lot. Charlotte, thank you so
Thanks,
much for
everybody.
joining us.
I have to
Oh,
go.
it's my pleasure.
Bye,
Thank you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
bye.
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 Thank you. Oh,
Bye.
That was fun.
that was amazing.
That was really good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good
Thank
job, Kitty.
Thank you. You guys
very
were
nice.
wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
it
don't-
was really nice.
I'm so
Very
glad.
nice.
Well, let's do it again. And yeah, email me and tell me if you have other genres as well that you're working in. And otherwise, we'll swing back around to this one again in a few months. Yeah, email me anytime if you have any ideas or yeah, anything.
All right.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Terrific.
Bye.
Have a good day.